Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the kitchen. So today is going to be our brownie day, and I have a few different recipes for you guys to choose from, but the one that we are going to be taking a look at right now is going to be the version 2. If you take a look at the recipe, these are your ingredients. So make sure that you have sugar, flour, cocoa powder, powdered sugar, chocolate chips, salt, eggs, oil, water, and vanilla on hand. The vanilla is going to, again, be one of those optional things, so if you don't have any, it's okay. And also for the oil, you can choose whatever kind of oil you want to use. I'm just going to use canola oil. You can use vegetable oil, peanut oil, any of those sorts of things. It's also possible to use olive oil. It shouldn't affect the flavor too much, and it might actually turn out okay if that's what you have on hand. So go ahead and grab all those ingredients and get them together. Here I have all my ingredients together, and one of the very important things, make sure you start off preheating your oven. So you're going to set this for 325. Make sure that you have that set. Okay. Now once you have that done, make sure you grab your pan. So this is my 9x13 pan, and the first thing I want to do is make sure that I have a cutout for the bottom of it. So grab yourself a roll of parchment paper, and we're going to take a look at how to do that so that it fits your pan specifically. You're going to want to roll out a little bit of the parchment paper just so you have enough to work with. After that, put your pan on top. You're going to want to push down in the middle so that make sure your parchment doesn't go anywhere, and just grab a pencil and trace around the edge. Okay, like so. When you're done, you'll have a trace out. Here it's a little bit off, so you can always just correct that a little bit. So there you go. You're just trying to get a pretty rough shape of what your pan looks like, and then just cut it out. You should end up with something like this, and that is going to fit into our pan perfectly. And it's really important that you have this on the bottom. Brownies are one of those products that are very sticky. And if you don't have this on the bottom, it's going to be really, really hard to get them out of the pan intact. This makes it so that it'll release easily. What we're going to do is get some spray oil. We're going to spray all the sides and the bottom. We'll put this in, and then we'll spray this as well. So then once the brownies are done baking and set, all we have to do is turn it over, and then it should come right out. So grab yourself a little bit of spray oil, and then we'll spray the pan and put the parchment in. I have my trusty Kirkland spray oil. This is probably the best spray oil for the price. If you don't have this or Pam or any of those sorts of things, but you do have oil or butter, you can just get some of it and like wipe it in by hand, or if you have a brush like this, you can just kind of brush the oil or the butter into it. Okay. So whenever you're doing this, be careful. You want to make sure that you spray it on a surface or over the sink. You don't want to do this over the ground because this is a wide sprayer. So there's going to be a little bit of spatter outside of what I'm doing. And if you start spraying the ground with oil, you do run the risk of making it slippery enough that you're going to fall down. Okay, so make sure that's well coated. Put your piece in. The way I usually do it, this is the side that I had traced on, so I'm going to turn that over because I don't want any pencil marks onto my food. Right, so fit that in and then just give that a light spray. We're done with our pan, and our first step here is going to be to mix together all of our dry ingredients. So I have my 3/4 of a cup of flour. I have my 1.5 cups of sugar. I have my sea salt. So I believe I wrote down just salt in it. It doesn't matter if you use sea salt, kosher salt, or regular salt. You just need about 3/4 to 1 teaspoon of it. Okay, so the last two are my powdered sugar and my cocoa powder. And these are both a little bit lumpy. So what I'm going to do is use my sifter here to get rid of some of those lumps. So just put your sifter out, put this stuff in. Okay, I'll start off with the cocoa. And just start giving it a little bit of a shake. And what happens is that it's forcing the cocoa through the holes. Okay, it's a little bit slow. What you can do to speed that up, just grab a spoon and then you can start stirring it. So just put your sifter out, put this stuff in. Okay, I'll start off with the cocoa. And just start giving it a little bit of a shake. And what happens is that it's forcing the cocoa through the holes. Okay, it's a little bit slow. What you can do to speed that up, just grab a spoon and then you can start stirring it. Okay, so you can see there's still a few lumps at the bottom. I'm just going to push those through the side. Okay, so when I have these just little bits in there, I'll just throw those in. Okay, they're pretty small, so I'm not too worried about them. Whew, that was exciting. So I'm going to do the same thing with my powdered sugar. So I'll just put that in there. And as I do this, I just want to point out, this is one of the tools that bakers use a lot when they just want to put a little bit of powdered sugar on something. So if you're doing donuts or danishes or some sort of pastry and you want to just lightly put a little bit of powdered sugar on, put the powdered sugar in the sifter and then just give it a little shake. Okay, so this is how they get those little frosted tips on their pastries. Okay, you look just like that. Right, nice finish. Okay, so what we want to do, because you can see there's pretty big chunks in there, we'll just stir those through as well. Okay, again, when I get to the bottom, there's not a lot left, so I'll just put that in there. Okay, just had to get rid of all the big chunks. Now that I have all my dry ingredients together, I want to grab my whisk or a fork or just something, and I want to mix that together. Just going to do this to make sure everything is evenly incorporated. So you may have noticed from the recipe that there is no leavening agent. There's no baking powder, no baking soda or anything like that. That means that these are going to be a little bit dense, which is pretty normal when you think about what brownies are like. Okay, so let's just think about how the lack of leavening agent is going to affect our final product. Okay, so that's pretty good. It's mixed in really well. What I want to do is move on to my next step now. Just set this aside. Grab another bowl. And I want to now mix in all of my wet ingredients. For the wet ingredients, I have my 2 eggs, my ½ cup of oil. And if you have a spatula, that works out well to get all of it out of there. Okay. I have my 2 tablespoons of water. And finally, I have 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So sad that my Mexican vanilla is almost done, but you got to use it, otherwise what's the point? There we go, so 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So with our next step, I'm just going to grab my whisk again and break up my eggs and just mix all of this together. Judging from the amount of dry ingredients I have and the amount of wet ingredients I have, I am extremely certain that this is going to be a very thick batter. So what I'm going to do is grab my wooden spoon again. Okay, so remember, the wooden spoon is the best tool for mixing something that's going to be a little bit tough. If I started using the spatula, it works okay, but it's too bendy and flexible, so it's too difficult to try and mix things that are really tough. I'll use it at the end to scrape out all the batter. I wouldn't want to use something like this plastic spoon. Okay, the spoon is okay, but it is far too brittle, and I've had lots of instances where I've tried to use it on this even though I know I shouldn't, and it's gonna break right here. Okay, so just use something like the wooden spoon. The fibers in it are strong. It'll make sure that it doesn't break. Okay, I'll just make a little well here. So there's my wet ingredients. I'll throw in my chocolate chips as well and give this a good stir. Okay, just stir slowly to begin with. If you go really fast, you could spray your dry ingredients all over the place. You might need to put a little bit of muscle into that. It gets pretty thick towards the end. Alright, there we go. So she's all done. Just get the batter off of my spoon. I don't need the spoon anymore. Now it's time to put it into my trusty tray here. So if you don't have a 9x13, you could still use a 9x9 or an 8x8. Just be aware that if you do that, you're cutting back the size of it, so that means that your brownies are going to start getting thicker. And because the layer of batter is thicker, it's going to take longer for you to cook. Okay, especially at 325 degrees. If you use an 8x8, you're probably looking at about 40 to 45 minutes. We're going to start this off at about 20 to 25 just to see how it goes, and then see if we need some extra time. Remember, when you're making brownies, it's always best to undercook it a little bit rather than overcook it. Now I'm just going to use my spatula because you can see it doesn't stick as much to that. I'm going to try and even that out. So right here I'm holding onto the parchment because if I do this it starts moving around a lot. So I'm going to try and hold one corner in place at least. There. Once you are able to get the batter all the way to the sides, it tends to not stick as badly. So at this point I'm going to try and even it out as much as I can because I want this to bake evenly. Okay, if I end up having thick spots and thin spots, then the thin spots will cook too fast and then the thick spots will still be raw and gooey. So I want this to cook as evenly as possible. That seems pretty good. So now we just have to put it into the oven. I'm going to set my first timer for 20 minutes and then we'll take it out and see how well it's done. It's been about 27 minutes. I know originally I was going to do 20, but then when I went to take it out of the oven, it was a little bit jiggly. So that's one of the good ways of checking to see if it's done. So just get the pan and just give it a little bit of a shake. And if this is not set and it's like moving around, then you know that it's definitely not done. So it's 27 minutes. I could start to smell that it was almost done. So I'm going to grab my paring knife and just see how it looks. Alright, so it's coming out nice and clean, so check the side again. Sometimes I don't know if I'm cutting into chocolate chips or not. Alright. Yeah, so what's coming off is just crumbs, so I'm good with that. I'll say 25 minutes is definitely a good point to check it, but these ones were in for 27 and they seem like they're done. At this point, all you have to do, just let it sit. I have this on a hot plate, so it's just a piece of cork. Just let that sit for a couple hours and let it cool down completely. For brownies, you want to make sure that they are completely set, because right now the inside of this is going to be really gooey, and if I start cutting it up, it's just going to start mashing it. If you let it cool down completely, the structure will set. You can just pop it out of there and then start cutting it up, and you're good to enjoy some brownies.